and Oilseeds recommended lists are a trusted source of independent information on variety performance. The lists are put together in partnership by a consortium which consists of AHDB, BSPB, MAGB and NABIM. Farmers can use the recommended list to make informed decisions on variety choice based upon the independent information which is provided. The recommended list has a project board and also 3 crop committees. The board and the committees are made up of representatives from the consortium members, but also industry experts, which includes growers and agronomists. The committees and board require robust data in order to make proposals and decisions on recommendation, and that's why it's essential that the recommended list has a robust network of trials to which generate that data.
So there are up to 400 recommended list trials of all the crops we test, 200 yield trials, and 150 of those are treated trials, 50 untreated trials. There are also 130 disease testing trials and 70 specialist trials which are for end-use quality testing. The recommended list trials are designed to remove as much bias as is possible to do from the trials designs that we use. We have incomplete block designs for the larger trials and the treated trials, and then for the smaller trials below a minimum number of 15 entries, they are just block designs. All the recommended list trials are inspected, and those inspections are carried out by the recommended list team. So when inspecting the trials and the trials plots, we're looking primarily for uniformity within the plots and within the trials. We're also looking for any high levels of disease or any weed species and other factors that may have an impact on the performance or the data that we get off the trial. We do test also for quality traits, and that includes testing for down the line end user quality traits, the requirements for milling, baking and brewing and distilling. So the trials are managed on a day-to-day basis by our trials contractors. So all the trials that we have are run by outside contractors, and we as the recommended list team liaise with those to ensure that the trials are run to the protocols that we provide. Once we receive the yield data and the quality or the disease data, the data is analysed internally by our data processing team, and they ensure that the data is of good quality and that there are no anomalies in the data. So we use the notes collected at trial inspection to help validate the data, the yield data, once it comes in. And they will then inform us as to the quality of the trials and give us an indication of any problems in those trials or problem plots that may not need to be included in the data set. So for decision making for winter oilseed rape, we have 4 years of data which we use, and then for the cereals trials we have 5 years of data which is used for decision making. So in the recommended list, the data is presented in 3 ways really. So for yield data, it's presented as a percentage of control varieties. For agronomic traits, it's presented on a 1 to 9 scale, and for quality data, it's presented as an average of the data set. So all the RL trials information is available on the AHDB website. There you can look at individual trial information. The trials data is continually updated throughout the harvest season, and you can sign up there for the eHarvest newsletter.
The recommended list crop committees meet 3 times a year. The first meeting happens in May. This is an opportunity to set the ground rules for recommendation in the coming year. The committees also meet again in August or September time. At this point they will review the harvest data and make decisions about which varieties are going to be resown into trial. This is also an opportunity to review winter varieties which are currently recommended. If a variety that is currently recommended comes out of trial, it will stay on the recommended list for 1 more year and it will be marked with an asterisk in the table. The committees meet again in November, and this is when they make the recommendation proposals which then go to the project board, and there's also an appeals procedure in place for the breeders. When the committees are considering varieties, they will compare the variety both to a yield target and to set comparative varieties. Varieties which yield above a threshold above the yield target, which is usually at 2%, and meet all other required criteria such as minimum standards for disease, will be automatically recommended. Varieties that are above the target but do not reach that threshold level, there would be an expectation to recommend unless the variety is shown to have a weakness compared to the comparative varieties. For varieties that fall below the yield target, there would be an expectation not to recommend unless the variety has additional strengths and no weaknesses compared to the comparative varieties. If a variety is more than 2% below the yield target, there would be an expectation not to recommend unless that variety has something really special, such as resistance to a specific disease. When the committees are making comparisons to the comparative varieties, different characteristics carry a different level of importance, and there are some characteristics that are more important than treated yield. For example, for winter wheat, septoria is treated as very high importance and fungicide treated yield as high importance. The RL crop committees will make proposals to the RL board in November on which varieties to recommend. The RL board will consider these proposals in November and ratify decisions. The recommended list tables are then published online, usually on the first Monday of December. The printed RL booklet is then put together and usually received on doormats around the end of February or early March. If you want to learn more about the recommended list, visit the AHDB website or come and see a trial for yourself at an Arable Connection event in the summer.